Let's talk about the CNN. I'm gonna bring up the CNN stuff. Boy, this is the top story. I think this is the top story in the US, at least temporarily right now, is the top story. Nothing nothing bigger than this right now. E- Elite elites have a conflict of interest. The relationships all throughout a government and everything, it's all incestuous. Everybody knows each other, everybody influences each other. We got to root that out. I don't know if it's even possible, but if you haven't heard, I'm going to start off with this tweet from Sagar. This is from Breaking Point. He's up on there. He said, so part of the reason Chris Cuomo lasted so long at CNN, despite repeated ethical violations, is that Jeff Zucker's mistress, CNN's EVP, this number two in charge, Allison Gollust, was Andrew Cuomo's former communications director. That was so. Jeff Zucker is the head of CNN, president of CNN. He's having an affair with the number two in charge. The number two in charge was a former communications director of Andrew Cuomo. And CNN has the brother, Chris Cuomo, working for them. How are we? So obviously, Chris Cuomo, he came straight out like, that's my brother. I'm not I'm not impartial. I don't blame you. But what's that got to do with me? I'm just trying to get information. CNN used to be a respectable, great channel back in the early 2000s. It used to be pretty good. That's how it became a disaster. Double levels of conflict of interest. New York governor, ex-governor, and so this was written when he was governor. That's why it said like that. Ex-governor Andrew Cuomo, and this is from the dnyuz.com. This is from August of last year, I believe. Doesn't just have his brother Chris at CNN, he also has ties to one of its top executives, sparking accusations that that's why the network has turned a blind eye to its star host's involvement in his siblings' sexual harassment scandal. This was talked about, and I wasn't up on this part, months ago. Allison Gollust was Cuomo's communications director, as we talked about, before coming the EVP, so the executive vice president in CNN. She was even tapped to replace Jeff Zucker, potentially. So, former press secretary Ari Fleischer just had to flat out say CNN has a real ethical problem on its hands. Now, I know he's a Republican, former Bush guy, establishment guy, but that's objectively true. Fleischer was adamant that Chris Cuomo had escaped punishment for his role in advising his brother over his mushrooming scandal because of the influence of Golis. And I don't have proof, but there is proof of a conflict of interest. No proof of that I've seen of wrongdoing yet. But where you see wrongdoing or where you see conflict of interest, you typically see wrongdoing. And Joe, you want to tell me that Joe Rogan's the problem? You've got a conflict of interest with the governor of one of our most important states, with a big media company. It's no different than the pharmaceutical, the big pharma is a big, um, advertiser with social media and all these other media companies. So of course they're going to censor stuff. Imagine if someone's paying you money and then someone's going to talk bad about the guy paying you money. You can be like, don't talk bad about my paycheck. So she was with Andrew Cuomo. So continuing on, she now runs the show. She's the number two to Jeff Zucker at CNN. One of the reasons why CNN has not taken any disciplinary action against journalist Chris Cuomo is because of the relationship she has with Governor Andrew Cuomo, he insisted. I'm not saying that, he's saying that. Brian Stelter. So if you don't want to believe me that there's T here or Saga or whoever else, Brian Stelter basically admitted it. Here's the quote from him. So the quote from him starts later on. It starts here where it says Stelter added. Stelter added he was going to court trying to burn the place down, talking about CNN, and claiming he had incriminating information. If this is the case, this is a domino effect that begins with Andrew Cuomo and Chris Cuomo being fired. That's a remarkable domino event. I think that's part of the story. He's basic. This is the convoluted professional way of saying that Chris Cuomo knows where the bodies are buried and he's spilling the tea. What does this all mean? Usually I have a takeaway. I always like, here's my takeaway. I guess I do have a takeaway. But my takeaway is more conflict of interest. Outside of that, specifically with this specific conflict of interest, how do we know what influence was going on there? Let me know what you think.